The United States Supreme Court just gave another loss to Donald Trump, the Federalist Society, Leonard Leo, and Big Oil, all in one fell swoop. They are rejecting an appeal brought by 15 different petroleum companies, along with the American Petroleum Institute, against a Hawaii City of Honolulu lawsuit against Big Oil, claiming that they used deceptive marketing tactics in order to deceive the public into believing that their product, oil, petroleum, and the like, were safe when they actually had devastating impacts on the environment and on people's health. I'm Michael Popok. Guess where you are? You know, you're on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Free subscribe right now and help us hit our goal of 500,000 by our half birthday. Let's get into this new Honolulu case. Been kicking around since 2023, but now the United States Supreme Court has ruled, with Justice Alito finally deciding he needed to recuse himself or disqualify himself from something. It's mainly because he owns Big Oil stock. But the rest of the Supreme Court, there were at least 5 votes among the rest to reject Big Oil, led by Leonard Leo, the head of the Federalist Society, and a giant media campaign and blitz against the Honolulu lawsuit brought by Big Oil, begging the United States Supreme Court to protect them from these kind of lawsuits, to insulate them from these type of lawsuits. And their argument was, A, we belong in federal court, not in the state court. Now, the Supreme Court of Hawaii already ruled in 2023 that because this case brought by the city of Honolulu and in its water treatment facilities department, because it focused on marketing, false advertising, consumer protection, and not about emissions or federal regulation, if you will, of petroleum, the case could continue in state court. It was not preempted by any kind of federal regulation. In other words, federal regulation did not preempt state law when it came to consumer protection and marketing fraud. And so you have that. And then so they rejected moving it to federal court, and they rejected the attempts to kill the case on preemption grounds, that the feds had already spoken, Congress had spoken in this area of regulation, and therefore the states can't also regulate. They found that that was untrue. Now, we weren't sure how the United States Supreme Court was going to rule, and I am a bit shocked that they have now dealt yet another loss to Donald Trump. Maybe they're trying to walk back all the things they did in favor of Donald Trump last year, and they're not going to do it again this year. I'm not so sure about that yet. We'll have to keep a closer eye. But I was worried about this case because in the past, including 10 years ago, including just a year ago, the Supreme Court has been against the environment. There's no other way to put it. They're against the environment. They took away a 50-year precedent we called in the law the Chevron decision, the Chevron doctrine, on another oil company, back when Neil Gorsuch on the United States Supreme Court, when his mother, Ann Gorsuch, was the EPA director, Environmental Protection Agency director, back in the 80s. And that stood for the proposition that as long as the heads of departments like the Environmental Protection Agency and scientists there were making decisions in good faith, they could interpret, and that interpretation needed to be respected by the federal courts about rules and regulations that weren't ambiguous. That was the law, and that gave a lot of deference to the different departments and cabinets in the United States and administrative state, and that drove the Federalists crazy and MAGA crazy. And they wanted to claw that back and put it all with the president, hoping that they would get the president. And so in that decision, which we call Loper-Bright, they got rid of Chevron, which kind of hollowed out the power of the EPA to regulate in environmental protection. Fast forward, they also had stopped on a very similar lawsuit to the one out of Honolulu, a very similar lawsuit last year on procedural grounds. So we're like, well, they got rid of that lawsuit on procedural grounds, and they got rid of the Chevron doctrine. And so what are they going to do next? And are they going to find what's called ouster, that the federal laws about environmental protection and emissions, it overcomes any right of a state to regulate in the area of consumer protection? Those were all on the chopping block, in my mind, as it got to the United States Supreme Court. But we just got the ruling. in a ruling that we know is great and MAGA hates, because MAGA has come out and said they hate it. Leonard Leo assembled a whole group of AstroTurf groups, kind of phony, looks like grassroots, grassroots people cheering on big oil. You know how that works? Whole bunch of groups to cheer on big oil, to campaign and lobby the United States Supreme Court, as best they could through the media, and having people hit them with social media in order to kill this lawsuit. Because this is like big tobacco 50 years ago when they wanted to kill that first smokers lawsuit. Eventually that broke the glass ceiling, and now we've had dozens of smoker lawsuits and class actions to give billions and billions and billions of dollars back to the public that were whose health was harmed or they were killed by using that tobacco product. Same thing here. Big oil is like, we don't want to be big tobacco. Kill this lawsuit. They shouldn't be able to bring a lawsuit against big oil because we told them that, we had commercials where there were like shiny seagulls walking on pristine beaches and, everything's really great while we were busy with an open pipe of sludge just offshore. That's the problem. That's what Honolulu is, of course, very, very interested in and protective of our wildlife and natural resources and refuge and all of that. Of course, they're going to be one of the states that's going to stand up for it. And so the good news is now with this new ruling, they were done. This is it. This case now continues because the Supreme Court says it's going to continue in Hawaii state court against big oil for deceptive trade practices and deceptive marketing about their product. It is a first step towards what I think will be a deluge, no pun intended, of new lawsuits against big oil. Clean energy is here to stay. I know that MAGA doesn't want it. I know that the Federalist Society hates it, but Joe Biden spent a considerable amount of time implementing clean energy strategies right up until the very end. I mean, like just a week ago, he protected 330 million more acres of wildlife and with conservation programs, just acreage that can't be drilled in with oil and gas leasing because the president says it can't be, and it can't be reversed by an executive order. That's the way that law works. So it's about 650, almost 700 million acres have been protected by Joe Biden. He's the biggest conservationist we've ever had in the presidency. He'll go down that way. And so it's going to be very difficult to dismantle clean energy. The subsidies that we've done for electric cars, for windmills and solar and hydroelectric and all of that infrastructure investment by Joe Biden, it's going to be almost impossible to dismantle that, try as he might during his only 4 years in office. I mean, that's the one thing that gives me great comfort, and I want to share it with you. Donald Trump has a unrealistic list of things he wants to do on day one. There are just too many levers of power and too many processes that have to be followed by basic incompetents that are coming in with Donald Trump, some of which have never been in the government before and yet have been given top leadership positions in his cabinet. It's going to take them, 6 months to find the light switch or where the bathroom is. I just give you, when I joined a large Wall Street firm that shall remain nameless, but is sort of connected to the incoming administration, my boss at the time, I had just come in from a big law firm. And my boss at the time, I'd taken a big job, was global head of litigation, doing all this stuff and running employment law around the world for a large company. And my boss came into the office. He thought it was funny, like snarky. He's funny that way. And he pointed to a guy that worked in office services for the company who was doing the trash at that moment. And by the way, I was friends with a lot of the office services people. They shed a tear when I left. And he pointed to that guy and he said, "See that guy over there?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "That guy," this is about 2 weeks, 3 weeks into my tenure. He says, "That guy knows more about this company than you do." And I said, "You're right about that. That is true." It gave me a strange, calming confidence when he said it that way. Eventually, I knew more than him. Maybe. I'm not even sure about that. But this incoming administration, they don't know it. And so Donald Trump will never be able to accomplish everything. And one of the things that we're watching with Joe Biden, even right up until this moment, is he's just stacking up things that Donald Trump's going to have to waste scarce political capital and resources to undo. The more, let me put it this way, the more Joe Biden does, the more Donald Trump has to undo. And while he's busy undoing, right, then it's a race against time and the clock. He's only got 4 years. You saw how long it took even Joe Biden, who was in good faith and diligent with a lot of energy, to get judges confirmed. He was confirming them up to the last day. Literally. It takes a minute to run the government. So again, the more hurdles, the more things that Joe Biden does now that he does, it makes it very difficult for Donald Trump to undo it all. He may not even get around to it in 4 years. So that's what you're watching. You're watching a full court press of the Biden administration to force Donald Trump to use scarce political capital where he can. He can't do it all. So he's never going to be able to dismantle clean energy. In a case like this, gives me renewed hope that we together as an American people can go after the bad guys in big oil who are, having a field day. I'll tell you, the two giant groups celebrating in the streets and lighting cigars with $100 bills after Donald Trump won, three groups: big oil, right? Fossil fuel, right? Cryptocurrency companies who spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get Donald Trump elected, as did big oil. And banks. Banks are already, I'm telling you, it's like the Monopoly guy burning $100 bills, to light up his cigar. That's how happy they are. They're getting rid of all the regulators they hated. They're making money hand over fist, as is petroleum and fossil fuel and crypto. Yeah? How does that help you, the American people, with your Social Security, with your Medicare, with your Medicaid, with your egg prices as a proxy for food prices, for the price of gas at the pump, or oil to heat your home, or gas to heat your home? How does any of that, how does taking Greenland by force or a $1 trillion purchase, how does that help you? It doesn't. This is Donald Trump trying to implement his wildest fantasies at your expense. And I think now we're seeing voter remorse set in big time, big time. We got to harness that voter remorse, point it towards the midterm elections, stay together and get some of those 9 million people that voted for Joe Biden who didn't vote for Kamala Harris, and some of those 20 million people who are registered who didn't vote at all, to get off the couch, get off the sidelines of democracy. This is a participatory sport. It's a contact sport, and get into the voting booths for the midterms. If we do that together, working together, then our reporting here is going to be quite different as we crush Donald Trump, make him the lamest of lame duck presidents as soon as possible as we set up for the next presidential cycle. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok on Legal AF. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.